Today, my guest on We Are High Stakes Poker is Steve O'Dwyer. Steve is one of the best no-limit hold'em poker players in the world, with over 22 million in live tournament earnings, 19 wins, and a European Poker Tour title. And today we talk about all the ingredients that have made up one of the greatest heaters that poker has ever seen. So Steve, how's life?
Good.
Just busted a tournament.
I did, but that usually happens when you play a tournament. Eventually you'll bust.
I normally don't like interviewing people when they just bust a tournament, but there's something about interviewing high-stakes poker players that the fact that it just happens is just completely ingrained, and it ain't an issue 9 times out of 10.
You know, it happened about 90 minutes ago, so had a little time to cool off.
It would take me 2
And
weeks.
I didn't really get cooled off because I saw I got bluffed like a few hands before I busted, so.
Was it always?
Still dealing with that feeling, but.
Has it always been like that? Have you always been able to just brush it off, or is that something you've had to develop over time?
No, I'm not the best at that. Usually, you know, in these high roller tournaments, we have re-entry. Very few of them are freeze-outs. And whenever I bust and re-entry is still open, I usually take, you know, at least 20 minutes to walk around and think about what happened and get my mind back into the mode it needs to be in for me to sit back down at the table.
Yeah, sounds just like a smart move. Just want to go back, way back, I guess, just to start in some sort of chronological order. Where did you grow up? Where was you raised? That type of thing?
Well, my dad was in the military when I was a kid, so I moved around a lot. But I went to middle school and high school in Philadelphia. And then, you know, I lived in Germany for many years when I was a kid, when my dad was in the military. And I've just been kind of pretty nomadic my whole life.
Yeah, it's like perfectly made for a poker player, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember my parents moving me from England to Wales. So we're still landlocked here, to put it into perspective. But it was a different country, didn't know anybody, had to leave all my friends behind. I found it really difficult. What was it like for you, moving from place to place, not being able to sustain relationships?
It's definitely very difficult, and this is pre-internet, you know, days. So like I've lost touch with basically everybody I knew before middle school. Just because, you know, maybe when you move to a new place, you get a little piece of paper with an address, and that address might be good, or that telephone number might be good for some time, but then, you know.
And we're also young then as well, aren't we? So it's not like we can just, oh, we'll see you in a minute, I'm just going to jump on a plane. We are kind of like, we have to do what our parents want us to do, like, you know. Any siblings?
Yeah, I have a brother and a sister.
Close?
Yeah.
And are you the eldest, youngest, in the middle?
I'm the eldest.
You're the eldest?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same here. Does that mean you was a favorite?
I don't think so. Maybe there's a bit more pressure, I don't know.
I was totally a favorite.
I don't think there was any favorites.
So what about poker then? You said that you know you could talk about some poker instances where you've had to face adversity and get over it. Let's go down that route a little bit. What have been the really difficult times in poker?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as with anybody that's been playing as long as I have, you have huge bankroll swings, and you know, it took me quite a long time to get to the point where like I wasn't always on the cusp of being broke. Like I thankfully always had people around me like Ike Haxton and Scott Seaver, Justin Bonomo, and, you know, a ton of other, I could go way down the list of all the people that I was around in the early days of online that kept motivating me and kept telling me like, hey, you know, you should go play this tournament, or, you know, I want to take a piece of you in this. Like, so that, you know, always kept me happy to, you know, wake up in the morning and be like, all right, well, you know, I'm not doing so well myself, but people still believe in me, and I'm going to get back out there and try again.
Are you the type of person who needs that? You know, you need somebody to show faith in you?
Yeah, I mean, it's helped a lot, and thankfully it's the faith is still there. Like, you know, I more enjoy having, like, you know, some people in the background whispering that I'm, you know, washed up, or, you know, or I was never good in the first place. I just have a long list of people in my head that I never forget that over the years, dating all the way back to like playing a $3 rebuy in 2004 with Matt Vengren, Plattsburgh, who was, like a $3 rebuy was huge stakes for me. And I remember him berating me in that, there's a very long list of people over the years that, have said some derogatory things about me. And I love the motivation that gives me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Jason.
Especially because like I'm not the kind of person that just goes out there and, I very, very rarely have interviews. I turn down 99% of interview requests, specifically because I don't want to end up in a situation where I feel compelled to badmouth someone, especially about their poker game specifically. It's just very bad taste and dumb for your bottom line. If you think someone sucks, you should keep your mouth shut.
And that comes from being on the other end of that.
Yeah. But I love to hear it. I love hearing about how people think I don't have it. So
it's like those old football stories with the managers when someone's badmouthed the team and they say, "You've done our team talk for us. I don't have to do anything now. I just need to pitch up the interview that you've just given, and that'll be enough to stir them up."
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned some pretty powerful poker players there as, a group of people who really helped you and backed you and had faith in you. How did you end up in that group?
I mean, a lot of us were posting on the same message boards. Like, back then, most everybody was kind of like a lone wolf in the poker world. Like, you just saw it on TV and then you Googled it and all of a sudden you were a member of some message board and some small poker community, and you would start exchanging ideas, and you'd get someone's AOL Instant Messenger screen name, and then maybe you'd meet up finally. When you go to play your first big live tournament, you meet some people, and we just had a really great group kind of coalesce together, starting in 2000 and I guess early 2007, and. We had several years where we were all living together at Panorama Towers in Vegas.
The poker tribe, or just tribes in general, in other words, finding people who are better than us that we can learn from to grow, seems to be a real prevalent key success criteria for any high stakes poker player. Everybody's talking about it. If someone's watching this and they want to get on in life, or poker, it doesn't matter really, what advice would you give them if they don't know anybody? You know what I mean? They think they don't know anybody. What advice would you give them in terms of trying to find a group of like-minded people or people who are slightly better at them and what they're interested in?
I don't know about any good advice I could give, but just maybe pay attention to like the people that are more successful than you around you, and try to figure out like, all right, what are they doing differently than me that I could implement in my own life or implement in my own poker game, and try to listen. Like, that's always really important, I think. Like, many of the times that I've been at like a group dinner or something with a number of my poker friends, I just sometimes catch myself where I go like 45 minutes without saying a word, just because I'm so locked into what everybody else is saying. And, most of my friends are a lot more articulate than I am. So just sitting back and listening to and observing what's going on, this helps me a lot. I just don't want to interrupt with my dumb thoughts. I just try to sit there and learn.
I'm surrounded by a lot of people at the moment, actually, who are really beating themselves up because they don't feel that they feel like they're somewhat defective or they're not normal because they're quiet in and around social scene, and they attribute success as being, oh, this person can talk a lot and is very loud, and I keep saying to them, no, be the person there listening, right? You can learn so much.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time the loudest person in the room is trying to compensate for, something else. And I try not to spend too much time around those kind of people.
Justin Bonomo, Scott Seaver, very influential people. Anyone else?
Well, I mean, I mentioned already, of course,
doesn't have to be
Caxton.
poker. What about outside of poker? Any inspirations or people who've been influential in your life?
I mean, my parents, my brother and my sister, my friends from college and high school, and my girlfriend has been a really great influence on me the last few years. But, you know, the main focus of my life is still trying to be a great poker player, and, you know, my biggest influences, my most important influences in that regard are, you know, all those guys I've already mentioned, plus, you know, many more.
And jerking around a little bit there, when you are surrounded by these great minds, how does it feel to ask them a question that you're actually thinking is going to be dumb?
Well, I mean, you just can't ever be embarrassed. Like, you know, poker's a very, very complicated game, and there's rarely an absolute right answer. And, you know, if you're not out there experimenting and doing some stuff that you think maybe this is wrong, then you're not going to reach the level that you maybe potentially have. You can't be embarrassed too bad. You know, sometimes I've certainly done some things that are pretty embarrassing at the poker table, but in the long run, it's made me a stronger player, I think. You know, I'm just a field player. I'm just trying to listen to your gut.
But it must
a lot
be,
of the time,
must be,
and sometimes it doesn't work out. But
it must.
more
You have to
often
be
than not for
vulnerable,
me.
though, don't you? If you're like, you know, you go into this like superstar. I'm talking like back in the day. Well, maybe you all kind of grew up at the same type of thing, you know, at the same time. And I mean, I find it like, I remember going to the World Series, we talked about the World Series before we spoke, you know. First time I went to World Series, I stayed at a house with a load of professional poker players. I wasn't. And I would lose in the day, and I would come home and we'd be in the jacuzzi, and I would just be so afraid of just telling them my hand. I would change certain aspects of it to make me not look so much like a mug.
Yeah,
you know?
that's a mistake. You gotta
Yes,
you gotta be willing to learn from your mistakes, and maybe it wouldn't even have been a mistake. You know, if you'd asked, they might have been like, "Oh yeah, that's, you know, it's a weird hand, but I'd probably play it the same way." You know, I've gotten that line many times from, you know, probably the person I asked the most hands to is Ike Caxton, and there have been many times where he's been like, "Yeah, strange hand, but I like what you did. Don't worry about it." I'm like, "Okay, yeah."
And when you are surrounded by those type of people, it really does help you when the naysayers do come in, because, you know, you've got people like that saying things like that.
Yeah,
It can be really reassuring. You've had a lot of success in life, in the poker career. Sorry, because I don't know about your life. But what are some of the proudest memories that you have?
Yeah, just, I mean, there's several really great tournaments that, you know, I'm happy to have won. I guess number one being winning the main event in Monte Carlo a few years ago. And I guess winning the first big Super High Roller I won in Macau in 2014 was a big moment, because especially then I had been on a pretty big downswing after winning Monte Carlo. And that kind of reignited my heater. And, you know, it came after a really, like, kind of critical talk I had with Ike, where, like, we'd just finished EPT London and it hadn't gone well, and my downswing was getting even worse. And we discussed some strategy things that, you know, I kind of made a complete 180 in what I was doing in a certain situation that comes up frequently in No Limit Hold'em, and it really improved my game massively. And that was a big moment, yeah.
Once again, it shows the importance of having the right people around and the right tribe to actually talk about these things. I remember when we first met, or we sat down and had dinner together for the first time. It was around the time you won the WPT National in Denmark. Yeah. And you was getting really, really close to winning WPT main events. Do you remember that freezing cold tent that we was in Venice, for example?
Yeah, I've told that story many times.
What did you do? You ripped down the curtains or something?
Well, they wouldn't let me. I wanted it, well, to explain what happened. This was December 2011, and it was the last tournament of the year like main event of the year, and I was in third place. Like back then, I guess it was Bluff Player of the Year was the major award for Player of the Year, and I was in third place, and decided to make a last-minute trip to Venice to try to lock up Player of the Year, and I made the final table, and it was not at the casino, the famous historic casino in
No, it
Venice.
wasn't.
It was at a casino right next door to the airport that is just kind of there for travelers, people that are flying into Venice for a day and going through a quick walking tour of the city, and then they have like an hour or two to kill at the casino. It's a very strange place to have a poker tournament, but they did. And then they held the final table outside in a tent, and the weather was freezing cold, and there was no heating inside this tent. And I begged the security guards to let me pull they had these heavy, kind of like velvet curtains,
yeah.
Ringing the inside of the tent, and I was begging them to let me pull them down so I could wrap myself up, because I didn't have anything that warm. I thought it was going to be, like nice weather in Venice, and it wasn't. But they wouldn't let me take the curtains down, and I ended up getting second place.
To a complete unknown that never resurfaced again, if I remember rightly.
No.
And I just remember I just remember looking at the Royal Flush Girls, because of course you were cold, but they had like next to nothing on.
Yeah,
They were absolutely
they
freezing.
had the worst situation.
Yeah, they weren't even moving, were they? They were just there to smile,
But yeah, I needed to win to get Player of the Year, and I got seconds.
You mentioned that about the Player of the Year. How do things like that rank important to you? Global Poker Index rankings, Player of the Year, that type of thing.
It's not massively important, but it's certainly motivation to keep staying where I am. Like there were many times, especially when they first announced the Global Poker Index. I guess it debuted in early 2011. I wasn't even in the top 300, and that was like a kind of a shocker, a wake-up call. Like,
right.
Holy cow! Like I've been playing live tournaments for a while now, and I'm not even top 300. Like this is brutal. And not long after, I started going on a pretty big heater and made my debut in the top 300, and I've pretty much been in the top 20. Like I'd say 60 or 70% of weeks, maybe a little less. I don't know, but I've rarely been out of the top 20 since then, and I think I only had like one very like week-long dip outside the top 300 when I hadn't been playing much. And yeah, it was, it's big motivation to wake up and look at that list and see people ahead of you that you don't want to be ahead of you. And I was lucky enough to put together, because the GPI is based on a 3-year sliding scale, and I was lucky enough to finally put together 3 strong years in a row to get to number 1 finally, and held it for a while until Fedor knocked me off the perch.
Yeah, I remember it was. I'm just going to ask you about. It was like insane heater. It hits insane heater.
Yeah.
It's like I remember Seidel doing wonderful things in Australia and going on a crazy heater and interviewing him at the time, and him saying to me, "I wasn't even going to play that much this year, but I know in experience that once you get on that roll, you've just got to keep going." And I always remember looking at it thinking that no one's ever going to better that. And then you came along, and then Dan Coleman came along, and then Fedor came along. And going back to that freezing cold Venice spot, you were on the periphery of winning a title, but nowhere did anyone, I think, including yourself, ever believe it was going to end up at 23 million. I mean, that is just insane. Please don't tell me it was luck. What happened? What changed that led to that heater?
I don't know. I mean, I made small improvements in my game. I've never been one to study too much in the more conventional sense that, people talk about when they go into the poker lab and stuff, like,
The old PIO solvers.
Yeah, I'm not, I've done a little bit of work, and I get all the, I get to listen to all the conversations my friends have about the stuff that they're doing, and I learn that way. And, Ike is always willing to answer my questions, or Scott, Justin, Sam Greenwood. I mean, there's so many great players that just have no problem, sharing, exchanging information with me. And I don't know. I forget where we're going with this.
What about lifestyle? I was talking about your move from, oh damn, I've just nearly made a final, and I've nearly won a WPT title, to, oh, I've won 20 million and 19 titles. What's going on in your life outside of poker then? Because, everybody's obviously very different. But I imagine if you stick two people on a poker table against each other on a regular basis, who are almost like clones game-wise, but one has a real shitty lifestyle and one has a really good lifestyle, then the one with a good lifestyle is going to have the edge, What was going on in your life then? Because I can't imagine for 1 minute it was falling apart and you're winning all this money and winning all these titles.
Well, I mean, definitely living in Vegas wasn't a good lifestyle for me. It was good in the sense that I learned a ton being around all these poker players, but, definitely didn't really take care of myself very well and wasn't always in a very good mindset, and definitely cranky all the time at being in Vegas. I just don't like it there.
Yeah.
I just was there out of necessity at the time. And then reconnecting with Europe, because I'd lived in Germany for many years as a kid, definitely helped me become a more balanced and healthier person. A lot more relaxed, less anxiety. And that definitely translates over to your poker results. If you're in a better place mentally and physically, it's a lot easier to go on a heater.
And on talking about purpose a little bit, was there anything this year that you wanted to set out to achieve?
I just want to have a winning year. That's always the number one goal. You just want to have book another win.
What is a winning year though? Are we talking financially, or do you feel it in here?
Well, yeah, you want to make money year over year, and that's the important thing. If you're not making money, you're not going to stick around. So, just want to put together a winning year and hopefully, actually win some tournaments to go along with making some money, and want to do more traveling and just enjoy life.
How come we haven't seen you kind of venture into the other games and you kind of just stick with the MMO?
Well, Scott Seaver once famously said he has no idea how I win at No Limit Hold'em because I'm the worst of all time at every single other game he's ever seen me play. So that's kind of why. And
he's in your corner.
Yeah, he doesn't really understand. He's like, how can you be so successful at No Limit Hold'em but be so bad at everything else? I've played a little bit of Omaha and done all right. Not too frequently, but sometimes at these tours there's some good cash game action on the side. And usually I'm busy with tournaments, but if I'm busting out early, sometimes I'll put in like a 5 or 6 hour Omaha session.
If you could propel yourself or jump in a time machine and move forward 5, 10 years time, what would you be disappointed with yourself that you hadn't done?
Just mostly, I've accomplished pretty much everything I want to accomplish in poker. I'd be disappointed if I didn't see more of the world. That's outside of poker. It's my number one goal, is to just keep traveling and experiencing new places and cultures and people, and I just want to keep traveling.
Is there anything outside of poker that you want to accomplish? Like, I keep thinking about this. How many it's like a game. It's like, how many end bosses are there for me to beat? When do I reach the absolute maximum score? Do you see yourself like Doyle, like, obviously not in the World Series because you don't like it, but traveling around on a mobility scooter, going from game to game? Or
well, hopefully I stay a little healthier. Not that Doyle's at fault for that. He had a horrible accident as a kid.
Yeah.
But I'd really genuinely love playing poker tournaments. It's so much fun. Not everybody feels the same way, and some people just want to do it so they can make a little bit of money and move on to something else, but I absolutely love it. It's so much fun playing tournaments. And people might not think that I am enjoying myself that much because of my demeanor while I'm playing, but it's just that I'm really competitive, and I just get stressed out and can sometimes be a bit abrasive, but I'm really deep down having fun, or at least trying to always have fun. Sometimes people around you prevent you from having fun, but
it seems like you're very self-aware.
yeah, I think I've said for years, I think that's probably one of my biggest strengths in poker. I think a lot of these younger kids that didn't have so much life experience before suddenly becoming professional poker players at a very young age have little to no self-awareness at all. And, I completely finished school or almost completely finished school before I ever even knew what poker was. I didn't start playing until I was 21. So, yeah, I definitely feel like self-awareness is a very important trait to have in poker. And, yeah, I think I'm frequently thinking about how other people perceive me at the table, and that has helped me a lot.
It's funny you said I did 20 years in the rail industry, and we always used to say the same thing for people who just left school and went to the railway and never did anything else. We would say they don't know what real life is because they just was in this bubble of the railway, and it kind of prevents you from kind of, having more self-awareness, and you can't get a greater bubble than poker. I mean, it's just bizarre.
Yeah, it's one of the strangest subcultures on the entire planet, I feel, but it's one that I'm happy to be a part of because it's a lot of fun.
A lot of people are going to be tuning in to this to learn more about Steve O'Dwyer, but there's going to be a lot of people who tune into it that don't even know who Steve O'Dwyer is, and they're just getting into poker. They think that anybody who gets to high stakes poker is obviously doing more right things than the people who have not got to that level. What would be some of the pieces of advice that you think people could apply to their lives that could make them more successful or get them out of some rut that they're in? I know that's a difficult question because it's a little...
I guess, taking time to really thoughtfully consider your options in life or at the table. I think generally you have more time than you think you do to make a decision in life or at the table. And I guess in shot clock tournaments, you don't always have more time than you think you do. But just try to find a quiet spot in your mind to really slow down and think about all the options that are available to you, and try to maybe come at it from a different angle and see if something appears in your mind that you're like, oh wow, I didn't consider that. What about this option?
Any weaknesses you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, I guess always trying to just keep a healthy lifestyle is tough, especially when you're traveling around so much. Eating right and exercising and all that kind of stuff is always difficult.
Well, it is when you're winning every tournament because you can never get a break.
Yeah, it's sometimes can be difficult to find time for other things if you're playing so much. But I guess there were plenty of times earlier this year where I busted out of every tournament in an hour, and instead of going for a swim, I sat in my room and played video games all night.
Video games are good. We're not always in beautiful surroundings like this where we can go and have a swim.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of places where you got to make sure you have some distractions.
And how does poker make you feel, Steve?
You feel all the emotions in poker. makes me feel good on average, a higher percentage of the time than it does make me feel bad. But yeah, you get a very wide range of emotions, and I feel like the players that are most successful find a way to keep it in a very narrow range as often as they can. You know, you got to keep an even keel.
Got to keep an even keel. Steve, thanks for your time. Really appreciated your chat.
No problem.
I know you don't do a lot of these things, so thank you.